The Queen of the Curve. That was the title given to Zaha Hadid. But there was a time in her life nobody ever believed she would be able to build anything. So how did she manage to bring these fantastic, beautiful and dynamic forms to life?
I knew then that there was not only an incredible future, but also that there would be an incredible future for architecture.
How did a little girl from Baghdad grow up to be one of the most influential architects in the world? This is a story of talent, a story of perseverance, and a story of a woman who never gave up on her dreams.
I don't like the word compromise.
Today on Blessedarch, we are exploring the life and designs of Dame Zaha Hadid. Now, before I dive deep into the world of Zaha, I want to take a moment to talk about her designs. She was able to bag brilliant and fantastic projects from around the world because she was able to communicate her designs to her clients in the best possible way. In architecture, communication is not just verbal, it is highly dependent on the visuals you produce. And this is where the sponsors of today's video can help. The visuals you are seeing on your screen right now were created using D5. D5 Render has become the go-to choice of many top architecture firms to produce beautiful and high-quality renders and walkthroughs in a fraction of time. With the intuitive UI and easy-to-use features like Live Sync, one-click weather switch, D5 Scatter, which is the ultimate vegetation tool, 13,000 plus built-in assets, and so many more powerful features, they give all architects and designers an efficient real-time workflow. And in this current age of AI, they've actually incorporated AI capabilities in the software, allowing you to effortlessly create ideal effects and styles for a scene with any references you wish to use. And the best part, their basic community version is completely free to use, and you can easily upgrade depending on your requirement. So do check out D5 Render today to take your visuals to a whole new level. I would like to thank D5 for sponsoring this video, and one way to help this channel would be to simply go and check out their products. And now, let's get back to the life of Zaha Hadid. The story of Zaha starts in 1950 in Baghdad, Iraq. Her father was a wealthy industrialist and a politician, while her mother was an artist. Being from a privileged background gave Zaha access to the best education and resources. In the year 1972, she decided on a career in design and got admission at the place that shaped her to be the architect she is today. And that was the AA in London. The AA, or the Architecture Association in London, has always been a well-respected and famous school to study design. And while Zaha was there, she studied with some of the most brilliant minds shaping up the profession and the discourse of architecture, like Rem Koolhaas, Elia Zengelis, and Bernard Tschumi. Now, even when she was studying, Zaha always had a different way of thinking. Elia Zengelis once described her as one of the most outstanding pupils he ever taught. We called her the inventor of the 89 degrees. Nothing was ever at 90 degrees. She had a spectacular vision. All the buildings were exploding into tiny little pieces. So Zaha always had a very different way of designing, and this was perhaps most evident in her thesis project. For her thesis, Zaha was inspired by the works of Russian supremacist artist Kazimir Malevich and created a project titled Malevich Tectonic. This was a concept design for a 14-level hotel on the London's Hungerford Bridge, executed as an acrylic painting. The design, the presentation, and the chain of thought she put into that project is celebrated and studied even today. So back then, it garnered a lot of appreciation. I have actually created a whole video exploring her thesis. I will put the link to that in the description of this video. After graduating from AA in 1977, she went on to work for her former professors Koolhaas and Zengelis at the Office for Metropolitan Architecture in Rotterdam. In an interview once, she talked about working at OMA. I remember Rem Koolhaas when they asked me to join OMA, and I said, only as a partner. I mean, honestly, I had just finished school. And they said, as long as you are an obedient partner. I said, no, I'm not going to be an obedient partner. So Zaha, even at that time, did not just have talent and a unique mind. She had a spine, and she knew how to stand up for herself. This is the primary reason she became who she did. She knew her worth. Her partnership at the firm did not last very long, but she did learn and make connections there. Connections that would help her to take the next step. And that was to open her own firm. In the year 1980, Zaha decided to start her own practice, and thus was born Zaha Hadid Architects. During these years, Zaha had made quite a name for herself with her innovative designs and presentation styles. Along with having her firm, she had also began teaching and quickly became one of the professors that people used to look forward to learning from. But major fame and recognition came her way when she won her first competition. In 1983, an open call was floated to design a sports club in Hong Kong. Zaha's entry was unlike the world had ever seen before. Called The Peak, Zaha created an almost exploding crystalline structure set along a diagonal at the hillside. She was able to achieve a sense of fragmentation, instability, and movement in her design. The structure did not seem to be held up by the rules of gravity. It almost seemed to be erupting from the hill. The proposal was radically different from what was popular at the time in the field of architecture. The design was never materialized, but it was highly publicized, and it got Zaha a lot of love and recognition, especially within the architecture and academic circles. After The Peak, Zaha took part in many competitions and even won some, but the problem was none of them ever materialized. For 10 whole years, Zaha did not build anything, but she was undeterred. People at the time started calling her a paper architect, which meant that all of her designs would always remain on paper and never actually materialize. She did get some international exposure in 1988 when she was chosen to show her drawings and paintings as one of the 7 architects chosen to participate in the exhibition Deconstructivism in Architecture, curated by Philip Johnson and Mark Wigley. But again, it got her more recognition, but not buildable commissions. For a long time, Zaha's designs felt too complex or too costly to build. Many started thinking of her as an architect who would never actually build anything in real life. But that perception was soon about to change. It all started with a terrible fire. On 18 July 1981, the production facilities of Vitra in Wailam Ryan caught fire. It was due to a lightning strike. There was a huge damage to the factories, and the people in charge realized that they do not have proper facilities to put the fire out. A large part of the campus had been affected, and so new building commissions were given to many famous architects like Frank Gehry, Tadao Ando, Alvaro Siza, and several other notable designers whose designs today all stand within the same estate. But there was also another addition made, one that could help prevent any such accidents in the future, and that was a fire station. Zaha had already made a name for herself with her bold ideas, and so she was tasked with building that fire station. Zaha wanted to create a dynamic design, one that could in essence symbolize a fire station. She explained that at such a space, you would want to be in constant alert, to be ready to leave as soon as an alarm rings, and so the building needed to reflect that tension and that alertness. She described her resulting design as movement frozen. Her design called for bare concrete planar walls that on the outside would look imposing and linear, but on the inside be punctured, tilted and folded to give way to the different spaces and functions. Every wall was cast in situ and left bare. Zaha did not want any material to clad the building or the roof. She also did not put any ornamentation in this building. She believed that doing any of these would distract from the volumes, from the dynamic masses, and take away from the visual purity of the different elements. The result was a sculptural building, one that felt like a concretized version of Zaha's paintings. This very first build project by ZHA caused waves in the architecture world. Her paintings and sketches had widely been circulated, but many did not think they would ever amount to anything. Her abstractions seemed too surreal for the real world, but with this project, she was able to bring her vision and her ideas to life. But as with all Zaha's designs, it also came with its fair share of criticism. Sometime after it was built, reports came out that firefighters had allegedly found the building difficult to work with, and soon after, the building was actually converted to an exhibition space and a design museum. Critics argued that Zaha heavily prioritized form over the actual function of the building. This is a criticism that has stayed with a lot of Zaha's works till date, that it purely caters to visuals and aesthetics and forms. Now I will not go deep into the debate of form and function in this video, but I do want to highlight that despite harsh criticism, the Vitra fire station was and still is a celebrated piece of design. Zaha would for the next 23 years go on to producing some of the most brilliant and magnificent pieces of architecture that would capture the fantasy and imagination of designers and non-designers around the world. But in many ways, this first project remains one of her most important, the one that opened the floodgates for her. And after this project was completed, the world of Zaha Hadid started to change for the better. After the Vitra fire station, Zaha's work was no longer classified as just theoretical. And this was the first in a series of projects that she realized in the next decade. From the IBA housing in Berlin, to the Mind Zone exhibition space at the Millennium Dome, to the Land Formation 1 exhibition space in Germany. These new commissions were all bigger in scale, but with each and every project, Zaha maintained her conceptual roots. In this time, the office ZHA also started to grow. Patrick Schumacher, who in many ways was her right hand at the time, had joined ZHA back in 1988. He had seen Zaha speak at a conference and was inspired and captured by her ideas and her ambitions. Zaha had that effect on a lot of people, especially young students. In the early days of ZHA, the office used to be filled by her students. When Patrick joined the office, there were only about 4 or 5 people there. By the end of the century, it had increased to around 40 people. Her practice was creating some fantastic designs around the world, and with each passing project, Zaha or ZHA was solidifying what some people called a style. Now, to understand the style of ZHA, we need to understand how Zaha worked. ZHA as a firm was very early to adopt digital tools, 3D modeling and parametricism. But in the 1990s, these tools were just beginning to shape up. At this stage, the firm followed Zaha's suit and each member of the firm used to sketch and paint like her. Zaha had carried her way of working from college into the firm. She created abstract, dynamic and exploding sketches for each of her projects. It was both an exercise in figuring out the design and a way to shape the visuals that would be shown to the clients. In terms of design, Zaha always tried to break the boundaries of what was considered normal and ordinary. Or should I say, what modernism as a style had made normal and ordinary. Zaha, of course, admired the works of many modernists, but her take on architecture was quite different from them. She did not want to create uniform, mass produced designs. She did not want simplicity and order just for the sake of it. She embraced complexity and chaos. I think painting was quite a fitting tool of exploration for her because she was able to create and experiment with spaces without bothering with how it would actually shape up. At least in the initial painting phase and exploration phase, it was all about the spaces and how they could make one feel. It is truly quite difficult to pin down and define ZHA or Zaha's style, but she once said it simply. The idea is to not have any 90-degree angles. In the beginning, there was the diagonal. The diagonal comes from the idea of the explosion which reforms the space. This was an important discovery. I think the main word here is reforms. The idea was to take a new perspective to creating and experiencing spaces, an approach that wasn't seen before, or in some cases, an approach that many felt too fantastical, one that could not actually be brought into the real world. From the year 2000 onwards, ZHA reached a new peak altogether. The ski jump, the Contemporary Arts Center in Cincinnati, the Fano Science Center, project after project, Zaha was winning competitions and winning hearts. And then came one of the biggest honors of her career. Zaha was awarded the Pritzker Prize in the year 2004, and she was the first woman to ever win it.
Thinking back to where I started this conversation, can you think of any reason your architecture is different because of your gender?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Architecture is a male-dominated industry. This is quickly changing in the 21st century, but historically it has only been men who have been on the forefront of this profession, or at least whose contributions have been deemed worthy of acknowledging. Zaha broke a lot of glass ceilings as she forged her way to the forefront of architecture. She became the first woman to ever win a Pritzker Prize. After that prize, Zaha had come in the league of what we call as star architects. Yes, it was mostly because of her work, but a lot of attention came towards her because she was in many ways the first woman to receive that level of recognition. She even talked about this aspect of being a female architect. I never used the issue of being a woman architect, but if it helps younger people to know that they can break through the glass ceiling, I don't mind that. She did admit that she never really felt a part of the male-dominated architecture establishment. She once said, "As a woman in architecture, you're always an outsider. It's okay. I like being on the edge." But there were loads of people who saw Zaha for Zaha. Rem Koolhaas once said, "I think she was obviously very proud of what she achieved as a woman, but in the end, there's no need for special pleading or for treating her architecture on that basis. Yes, I think she has made an enormous contribution as a woman, but her greatest contribution is as an architect." Zaha used the spotlight she got to garner more admiration and work. Newer and bigger projects kept coming her way as Zaha Hadid Architects became one of the most celebrated architecture firms in the world. The Sheikh Zayed Bridge, the Guangzhou Opera House, my personal favorite, the Maxim Museum, and of course the iconic Haider Aliyev Center. Zaha, with her fantastic array of projects, had garnered a new title, the Queen of the Curve. Her office also kept growing in size. From only 40 people in the early 2000s, there were more than 450 people by 2008. She kept winning many more prizes in the years to come, and in 2012 she was made a Dame Commander of the Order of the British Empire, changing her name officially to Dame Zaha Hadid. Of course, wherever there is fame, there is also criticism. A lot of her projects became grounds for controversy, like the FIFA World Cup Stadium in Qatar, the London Aquatic Centre, and the new National Stadium for the Olympics in Tokyo. but Zaha kept on. Of course, some of these did affect her, as it would anyone who puts their heart and soul into their work. But she and the firm always stood strong. She used to say, "I don't have any frustrations. If you want an easy life, don't be an architect. Ask anybody in my office, you have to work all the time. If you want a 9 to 5 job and to go home and relax, just don't do it." And she kept at it. She kept the lifestyle right till the end. On 31st March 2016, Zaha was in Miami, where she was admitted in a hospital to be treated for bronchitis. However, at the hospital, she got a heart attack, and the doctors were not able to save her. So Zaha, at the age of 65, took her final breath. In the year 2008, Zaha Hadid was ranked 69th on the Forbes list of the world's 100 most powerful women. Zaha, throughout her life, through her work and through her ideas, never demanded respect. She commanded it. Year after year, she kept winning awards. The Pritzker, the Sterling Prize, the Design Museum Design of the Year Award. In 2016, the year she passed away, she also received the RIBA Gold Medal. It was clear that her work had had a lasting impact on the minds of designers around the world. Rem Koolhaas, her old mentor, partner and friend, once described her saying, "She was somebody with a rare kind of courage. It was not constructed courage but an inevitable courage. She was just made that way." And when she was in school, he already knew that she was going to be really big soon, describing her at the graduation as a planet in her own orbit. After Zaha passed, she was laid to rest in England, right beside her family. What Zaha had built had already become much bigger than her. She had fostered and nurtured a team of capable and talented designers. After she passed, Patrick stepped into her shoes, steering the firm and taking the legacy of Zaha ahead. And even after her passing, ZHA has continued to bring projects to life. A lot of the projects that were left unfinished, which she was personally involved in, like the Antwerp Port House, the King Abdullah Petroleum Studies and Research Center, and the Al Janoub Stadium, were all completed before the end of the decade. But the legacy of Zaha goes far beyond her own designs. Her legacy today is every student she ever taught, every designer she ever collaborated with, every person she ever inspired, and every woman she broke open glass ceilings for. Whether you are a fan of her work or not, you will surely agree that Zaha was a force, and her belief in her own ideas brought her to being one of the most celebrated architects in the world. And that was it, you guys. That was the documentary on the life and designs of Zaha Hadid. I actually made a 2-part documentary on my channel about her already called The Queen of Curves. But that was a few years ago and my research and editing skills have improved since then. So I wanted to make it again to do her life story justice. What do you think about it? Let me know in the comments below. Also, are you a fan of Zaha's story and work? Let me know that too in the comments below. I have created a lot of content on Zaha and Zaha Hadid architects on this channel, so do check out those as well, especially the videos on her thesis, the interview with Patrick Schumacher, and the interview with Shajay Bhushan from ZHA. The videos should show up on your screen in a moment. Also, do check out the sponsors for this video, D5. Documentaries like these take a lot of effort and time and would not be possible without sponsors' help. D5 is an amazing product and best of all, it's free. So do check them out, which will help support this channel too. The link is in the description. Also, who should I make a documentary on next? Let me know in the comments below and subscribe to Blessedarch for more such videos. I will see you guys soon. Until then, bye bye.